How's it going? Today we are talking Run Disney pacing, and I have Sherry Marcotte here to tell us all things about running with the Run Disney Pacers on race day and more.
This is Running to the Castle, a podcast for injury-prone Run Disney runners on a journey to running magical miles. Join me, Dr. Allie, as I share the secrets I've gathered as a runner, doctor of physical therapy, and coach. You'll learn the exact ways I get my clients to the castle strong without feeling broken or held together with KT tape as they cross the finish line.
So hi, Sherry. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Allie. I appreciate it. It's glad to be here.
This will be so much fun. I get so many questions about how do I utilize the Run Disney Pacers and what happens if they're not in my corral and how do I maneuver that? So I'm hoping that you can answer those questions and more today.
Definitely.
So go ahead and tell us about yourself and what you do, how you got into Run Disney, how you got into Run Disney pacing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of go back a little bit. I'm a native Floridian. I did move away for about 10 years. And before I moved away, I wasn't really a runner. I had always played sports, but I really always wanted to get into Run Disney and I could never get in. So I don't know if you remember, 15 years ago, it was like sold out in seconds. You could never get in. It was crazy. So I always said, I want to do that someday. So fast forward, we moved away. We moved to Lexington, Kentucky, about 2012, and I left my job with Bank of America that I had been at for a really long time. And about a year after living there, we were like, let's run a half marathon. My husband thought that would be a great idea for something for us to do. So I trained for it and I ran it, and I was like, wow, I'm not sure I ever want to do this again.
As one does with a half marathon.
Right, absolutely. So fast forward to the second year, and I trained harder and smarter and learned a few things along the way. And I said, okay, I'll try it again. So then I did it the second time. And then you know how you kind of start out a little bit off from where you maybe really would be because you really don't know anything about running? Well, I slowly got addicted to the fact that I was like, all right, I'll go from my first half marathon was like a 3:06. And I moved down to like a 2:45, and then I moved down to like a 2:30, and then I moved to a 2:15. So, as time goes on, you kind of get addicted to that training against yourself, and that's where I went with it. So, I trained with the Galloway program in St. Louis because in the 10 years I was gone, we also moved to St. Louis. So that's where I really got into it. I had kind of been doing the Galloway method after meeting Jeff when I was living in Lexington, Kentucky. During one of the 5 years I was there, he came to visit to our little tiny run club. And I mean, the room was like the size of a shoebox. And he was there, and I just remember going, so that's what all these people have been doing. They have these timers, and they beep, and they go off, and they run walk. And I was like, that's what I want to do. So it took a long time to get into the pacing. Of course, I moved back to Florida about 2 years ago, and being part of the Galloway program, customized training, being in with that group and really knowing the people in there, I think is what helps to let Chris know you're interested, you're serious about it. I had paced with other pacing teams before, so I did have some experience. One of the hardest things that happened was I had gotten asked in 2018 to pace the Maryland half marathon. And unfortunately, like all of us runners, I got a serious leg injury. So about 2 weeks before the race, maybe, I went and I got an MRI, and the doctor called and was like, so you might want to get a pen and you can start writing down all the injuries you have. And I'm like, oh, great. I don't think I want to do that. So
yeah, no, thank you. Hard pass.
Yeah. So I gave up my first pacing spot in 2018 with Galloway, and actually didn't pace my first race until, I guess really it was the marathon this year. So it took all that time. In the meantime, I had been moving around, pacing with other pace teams, just different things. So I finally got the ask this January, and I got to pace the marathon, and it was amazing. I really loved it. So I've paced everything else so far. It's definitely been a heck of a year. So I will not be pacing most likely for the marathon this year, or for Princess because I have Tokyo and Boston. So definitely focusing on those, and it's a lot. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, that's so exciting. Tokyo and Boston. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll miss you in runDisney, but
Yeah, for sure.
for good reasons.
Yes. Yep.
That's awesome. And how did you like how did you know you wanted to pace?
That's, I think, something that you come across as time goes on. You realize like you've achieved a lot of your goals for running, and then, very analytical. I like math, I like making things work, and I definitely like helping people. So that definitely aligned with a lot of things I wanted to do. So one time I gave it a try and I was hooked after that. So I've paced in a lot of places, not just runDisney. So I've paced in Colorado a couple of times, and then I've done a couple of things all over the United States. So it's been really rewarding and really enjoy doing it, just because it takes a lot of mental effort to bring, the happiness and the excitement and all of that, while also focusing on, okay, I got to hit time goals and keep all my people happy, and try and get them there and really believe in them, because a lot of times people just don't believe in themselves. They're just automatically from the beginning like, I am not going to do this and I am not going to make it. And you're like, but you are.
Right. You will.
You will.
We're going to change that mindset.
We're going to change that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're almost being a motivator in addition to a pacer, like literally physically keeping the pace, but mentally keeping the pace.
Absolutely.
For them as well.
And a lot of times people just train, something happens, whether you're injured or you just didn't have the time, no matter what happens, you can always stick with a pace group, even if it's a little bit slower than what you run, and run walk is going to help you get to the finish line. I always run walk, and I really, really believe in it, especially when I first started doing it. And I couldn't believe, I didn't come home like all those other people and just like pass out asleep after a half marathon. Instead, I like had energy and I could still keep going. And I mean, that sold me from the very beginning. So I have always thought, no matter what, it allows you to start that recovery process in the very beginning, so you're not taxing yourself out. And then you're able to still go through the rest of the race. One of my sweet friends now, we met at Princess. She had injured her ankle and she was like, I don't know how long I'm going to make it. Man, she made it so far before she just literally couldn't do it. And she had sprained her ankle like 2 weeks ago, or before the race. And so, things like that, where you're just like, oh yeah, you're going to make it. You're going to do it. You can do this, and then they make it. And then you become great friends. So,
yeah. My sister, I got into runDisney because of one of my sisters. She's been doing it since, I think her first race was in 2014. She was doing the Avengers races at Disneyland.
Yeah.
So that's how I got introduced to it. But at Dopey, I want to say 2022, she sprained her ankle during the half marathon. Like 2 miles in, and it was, one of those narrow areas. And she, I think, had an issue where, I don't know, somebody cut her off or somebody stopped right in front of her. And so she went off the road, and, it's uneven, and she twisted her ankle. And she was like, all right, I'm going to run walk the rest of this. And she finished Dopey. She finished the half. She finished the marathon. She got all of her medals. She's like, that's all I want. I want this ankle to not be so bad. And I want to finish it. And then as soon as she finished the half marathon, she called me and she's like, all right, PT, tell me what to do.
Range of motion, ice, all the good stuff.
Exactly. But run walk saved her during that. Yeah. So do you, like, what pace do you pace people at? Like, what's the finish time? But also, I guess, what do you follow like the same intervals every time?
So it can depend. Usually the pace leader will ask us, hey, I need somebody for this slot. So we get assigned a slot. And, it's got to be something that's in your wheelhouse, right? You don't want somebody pacing a 1:45 or a 2. That's not in their wheelhouse, right? So, we do run our own races to be able to say like, hey, here's what I can accomplish on my own. But also that can show like, all right, so I can run a 2:10. Great. Well, then you should have no problem pacing like a 2:20 or a 2:30, right? So yeah, it's definitely something that is asked of you. Also, you can kind of be flexible and move to multiple areas, right? You might run an 8.5 minute mile, but you might pace the 3:30. You never know, and maybe that's your favorite spot. So it's never really the same intervals. It really is dependent upon what pace time you're doing. So let's say you're doing the 16-minute per mile pace and they're doing a 15:30. Well, they'll do the 15:30 every single race time, right? But then you might do a 2:30 and your interval is a 90:30 or a 60:30. So it can just depend based upon that, what your actual finish time is supposed to be or your goal time. And then we're just given the intervals, and most of the time it's something that you probably run often or something you can run without being taxed, to where you can still speak, you can still have an engaging conversation with your runners, and you, let's just say, hopefully don't fall off for some reason, right? Because as we do know, sometimes it's just hard and sometimes you just can't make it, right? You might have a really bad day, you might be sick, you just never know. So
Yeah, and if that happens with a pacer, is it just you, or are there other pacers with you to keep on going if you're not
yeah.
having your best race and you have to pull back?
Yeah, great question. There's always two of us, and that is for that specific reason. So, like, let's say I need to go to the bathroom. My pacing partner is going to continue on with the flag and keep that same pace the whole time. I might dip off, need to go use the restroom, then I can just get back on course and catch back up. Same situation. If something were to happen, and it just happened actually recently to myself and my pacing partner, Kelly, she's also, normally the person I run Disney with. Unfortunately, she hadn't been feeling well, and we got to where Jeff was at the finish line, and she went to say hi to him, and her whole body just froze up. So, I mean, things like that happen, and it just happened to be that day. Whatever happened to her body just happened, and she couldn't move. So, of course, I just had to go on, and that's how it goes sometimes. But that's why there's always two of us.
That's great. And so you mentioned, like, if you need to dip off and go to the bathroom, what about if
Mhm.
one of the runners needs to dip off and, like, go to the bathroom or take longer through a water station or something like that?
Yeah,
How does
definitely.
that work?
So, same situation. If you need to go to the bathroom, we'll usually tell people, like, just look for our flag, you know, um, try to look for the bathrooms that are less packed. Sometimes it's better if you can wait until you can get in the park where the line isn't so bad, because then it's easier to catch back up. But you got to know, all right, so they're running a 30:30 or a 15:30 at a 14-minute pace or a 13-minute pace. You're going to have to speed up some if you want to catch back up, right? So just know that going into the bathroom stop, that, all right, I might have to pick it up to catch back up, but you will be able to see me because I've got a big flag, and you'll just see me going down. And then as soon as you can catch up, then you can just ease right back into it.
Oh, that's perfect. So
Yeah.
carrying the flag, this is kind of a little off topic, but does your arm get tired carrying that flag?
So it's funny, someone recently asked me on my Instagram, they said, do you always carry water even for short runs? And I'm like, yeah, because you know why? My arm is always ready. So like I've got this arm or that arm, and I try to switch so that way I can just always have that grip of that flag in my hand without it ever really feeling like, oh my gosh, my arm is really tired. Luckily the flags are pretty light, on a nice wooden dowel, light flag. The really hard part is on a really windy day. That's where it gets kind of difficult because it can really create a drag. So yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yep.
Like, does it like blow around on you?
Yeah, it does. I've not at Run Disney, but at a couple other times it's been so windy that I've had like the flag, like, oh my gosh, can we tape it down a little bit more? Because I don't want it to fly off.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, of all things to go wrong on race
Right.
day, your flag is like flying away.
Yes. Yep. Sometimes you got to kind of like cinch it down a little bit so the flag's like a little bit closer to your head, so you're not like, trying to blow away in the wind. But
Right. Yeah, it's not like an umbrella taking you back with
yeah.
it. Oh
Yeah, for sure.
gosh. So is there a specific corral that the I mean, I would assume that there's a specific corral that the specific pacing groups are in, because
Yes.
obviously, like, if you're in a corral, that's going to be faster, so the faster pace and so on and so forth. So can you talk a little bit about how that works?
Yeah. So usually about, sometimes it's 2 weeks, sometimes it's about a week. We'll kind of figure out where we're going to be positioned. It'll be based upon how the corrals are broken up. And I don't know if you ran most recently at Wine and Dine, but they did start a new thing in the corral system. So that was also a new experience for us. I paced the 310 with Kelly, and it was definitely weird because I had never been in the E corral where they had broken it up into 3 separate E corrals, and then even with that made many waves inside of that. So you know it's hard because you got to make sure you got enough space between you and the pace group in front of you. So it kind of worked out well in the fact that it was broken up into those 3 smaller corrals where we weren't stacked on top of each other, because depending on where they tell us to be and how many pacers are going to be in which corral, that's where it's really can get a little backed up sometimes, because you know how the courses are very narrow in certain spots, and we can catch up to each other if we're too close trying to go around that turn
Yeah.
into the chute. So yeah, and really it kind of corresponds to the pace. So you have pacers in that group that should be with those runners, right? So like the 3:30, 3:20, 3:10, 3 hours, we're going to be in those E corrals, but then like our 2:50 and 2:30, 2:40, we're going to be in D, C, and B, depending upon where the runners are seated based on proof of time. So,
And it works the same with like the regular corral system, right? So if you're in E, but the pace group that you wanted to follow is in D,
yep.
You can't jump into that like as a participant, right?
Right.
You have to stay in E, correct?
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing, we try to tell people at the expo at the table is, hey, just try and get as far close to the front of E as you possibly can, so that you won't be that far off from maybe it's the last one in D. You really got to know at some point if you're in E and the person you want to run with is in B or C, that's going to be, pretty much impossible, only because it's going to be packed, the time catching up, you could really pace yourself out basically, right? Trying to catch up. So if it's something a little bit more realistic, like, hey, you're in E, but you wanted to run with the last pacer in D, it's possible you could catch up. You just got to know that you might need to run a little bit more and walk a little bit less to kind of like slowly gain on them and get through to them. So that's also another option.
That's a good point. And, you just mentioned running more, walking less.
Mm-hmm.
What if somebody doesn't follow the run walk intervals but wants to be in a pace group? Is it feasible for them to do that?
Yes. And I like to tell people the proof is in the pudding. Just try it. Ease into that run, ease into that walk. Go with us from the very beginning. We will get you to the finish line. And it doesn't matter if you've never done it before. Today's a great time to start. Maybe your training fell off, or you just are in our corral and you want to be with us and see what it's like. You can join us. There's no requirement, no sign up, nothing. Just come be with us and we'll tell you when to run and we'll tell you when to walk. And it's just an amazing thing that happens, and like we tell people like, hey, say hi to your neighbor, and we tell you all about us. So you never know who you're going to meet. I mean, I've met some of my best friends at runDisney.
Yeah. And I like that. So I didn't realize this. So you had mentioned just a couple of minutes ago that you have a table at the expo, but there is no sign up. You can just kind of jump in.
Yep. Just jump in. Yep. No sign up. So you'll always see the Galloway booth is usually kind of towards the exit area, along that like last row of exhibitors. And we all volunteer. So we come, the days of the expo and we volunteer and we're there to answer questions. And then you'll always see that lovely list of us, and it'll have all of our names and our bib numbers and our corrals and what we're running. So it's really cool because you can just show up and say, hey, and start from the beginning with us.
That's cool. And so like you just mentioned like bib numbers and what pace you are and everything. So with the bib numbers, the pacers are runDisney participants, right? Like you pay to run the race, right?
Yep. So we are Run Disney participants, and then so for instance, we sign up usually. Like say I want to run the challenge, I'm going to go ahead and sign up, and then if I have the privilege of being asked to pace, then yes, I do pace. And then a lot of times we are given a refund for just that race. It's kind of interesting in that like some of the races have like specific, like you can sign up just to do that one race, but like a lot of times for me it's just different because I always am like doing the challenge for whatever reason. Never just do one. So that's how it is.
It's so funny with Run Disney. Like so many of my clients will be like, "Well, I'm just doing the marathon," and I'm like,
Yes.
This is like the only time that people can actually say I'm just doing the marathon, as opposed to Goofy or Dopey or the 2-course challenge or the Springtime Surprise 3-course.
Right.
And it's like it's such a funny statement just because it's like just the marathon. Oh, just the marathon.
And then sometimes I get roped into doing the 5Ks too. Sometimes my friends from up in St. Louis or Kentucky will come down and they'll be like, "Oh, just run with me. Let's do it. I'm coming." And then, you get roped into all of them. So before you know it, you're running 3.
Yeah, exactly. With a lot of 2 a.m. wake ups.
Yes, a lot.
Do you have a hard time with pacing after doing all of those 2 a.m. wake ups?
Honestly, for Wine and Dine, I worked, so we can talk about this later, but I work for Boulder Athletic Wear. So I not only set up on Wednesday at the expo, I then ran the 5K, the 10K, and the half, and I worked the expo Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So, yeah, it's become an art. Like I have to know, I try to eat at the expo so that by the time I'm done at 7:00, I can go back and decompress for, 5 minutes before I have to go to sleep. And I do pretty good at it. As long as I can get a little bit of sleep, I'm doing pretty good. So the hardest one is definitely Dopey. Definitely.
Yes. Yeah. I went to 2023.
Mm-hmm.
My sister, the same one I mentioned before, she did Dopey that year. I think it was her second Dopey. She can correct me in the DMs if I got that wrong. Sorry, Lauren. But I know she's listening. But so I had to wake her up on the marathon because her alarm was going off and she kept sleeping. Like not even snoozing. She was sleeping. And I'm like, Lauren. And
don't miss your Dopey challenge.
Yeah. She was like, sorry, it just by the 4th 2 a.m. I am like donezo. And I'm like, oh, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got up because I went to go cheer her on at, different parts of the race at marathon, which is a feat in itself, bouncing around like as a spectator. I just did it the once and now I'm like, I'll see you at the finish line. Maybe I'll see you in Animal Kingdom. I specifically went to Animal Kingdom first on that day. I know obviously it's a little bit later, but so that I could see her like run through it.
Yeah,
so
for
that
sure.
was cool. Yeah. Okay, so sorry for going a little off track.
That's okay.
What would you say are like some of the biggest mistakes that runners make, either race day in general or like pacing, using pacers and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a personal just running standpoint is, the best thing to do is to train and to figure out your nutrition and hydration situation. We, as experienced Run Disney people, know that sometimes the weather can be quite unpredictable. So, it could be 100 degrees or it could be 40 degrees. And, you need to have a little bit of a base so that like, okay, I know that if it's really hot out, I need to hydrate early, often, and then I need to take in calories often. I might need salt pills if I'm that kind of person. So really having that plan down so I need to switch from maybe taking something every 4 miles to every 3 miles, and having a little bit of extra in case, it's really hot. Because, I try to carry extra like goos, gels, beans, whatever for other people in case somebody doesn't have something. That's a hard thing, because I'm sure you can fall out like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the biggest things. As a pacer, we try to be prepared for all kinds of things like that. So again, always, trying to get our participants and our followers to stop at the hydration stations. Kelly and I are really good about announcing like, hey, we're going to walk the water stop, get some water, get some Powerade. Especially if you're not carrying something. It's okay to wear a vest if you want to. Maybe that's what works for you. Don't feel like you can't wear your hydration vest. It is perfectly normal to do that. Like I was telling you before, someone asked me if I carry my handheld every time I go on a run. And I do, because I don't know what I'm going to experience out there, and I might need a little extra. So, better to be safe than sorry.
Exactly. Yeah. I
Yeah.
always carry my handheld water as well. And, I could be going on my shortest runs that I do at any given time could be 2.25 miles.
Mm-hmm.
I will still take my 18-ounce Nathan
Yep.
handheld with me and I'll finish it.
Yep.
Because I mean, I need to drink throughout the day anyway, but also
Yep.
I live in Las Vegas and I try and stay out of the heat, but you never know when that heat is going to hit you.
Same here in Florida. We just never know. And, I go out sometimes in the summer mornings and it's 85 degrees outside, and it's so miserably hot. And sometimes you just really don't realize how much you're losing. So definitely a good idea to always carry something with you. I always like to think too, I always wanted to bring the run walk to many people. There's still, I feel like sometimes a stigma around that. So, don't ever feel afraid to try it. Even if you decide it doesn't work for you, try it. You just don't know how amazing it could be. I know after the first time I tried it and I just loved it. I mean, the only mistake I think you can make is not giving it a try.
Yes. And it's so interesting because I've talked to so many people and they think run walk intervals have to be like 15 seconds run, 30 seconds walk, or some kind of short interval, and they're like,
Yep.
I can't do the start stop all the time. And I'm like, I mean, I guess I technically do and don't follow run walk, but I do it at like different intervals. So I've told some of my clients like I'll run 3/4 of a mile and then I'll walk the last quarter mile.
Mm-hmm.
Or vice versa. If it's a bad day, I will run a quarter mile and walk 3/4 of a mile. It doesn't make me any less of a runner. I'm
Nope.
doing different intervals, but it makes it so much more enjoyable to not
Mm-hmm.
like punish yourself, so to speak. Like, oh, I have to run this whole thing. And then you're miserable the whole time.
Right. Right. And the Galloway method, it's really actually quite easy. On the website, you can plug in what your magic mile time is, and it'll actually spit out a calculator for you and tell you specific intervals to run. So maybe it is 15:30, maybe it's 30:30. For me, I like to train at a 60:30 most of the time. Sometimes I'll train at a 45:30, depending on what I'm working on. But, then I do incorporate speed. But you really got to follow that 80-20 rule where you're not doing too much and you're not doing too little and you're not tiring yourself out so you can't keep going. And that's the biggest thing, right? What works for me might not work for you. And that's okay. That's the beauty of run walk. And the even easier part of the Galloway method is on the website. You can put it in, calculator spits it out, and it'll give you all kinds of things. And really try them all. Maybe a 10-second run and a 30-second walk, or a 10-second run and a 15-second walk, or walk run ratio works. You just have to find out what works for you. I've run faster doing run walk than I ever did running straight through before I found the Galloway method. So, that's also another thing. A lot of people, just like, oh, you're not running if you're run walking. Well, you know what? Hate to be the one to tell you, but it's actually pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I'm still running and I'm just recovering more and I still run pretty fast. So, I can't complain.
Right. Exactly. You get to keep doing what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody wants to run straight through,
Yep.
Great. If somebody wants to run walk, great. Like, let's not compare ourselves to other people and let's
Yes.
not yuck somebody else's yum.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you.
Right.
Have you ever noticed, like the pacing aspect of the run walk intervals? Can you run like too fast on your run interval? Is there like a magic time
So I know where you're
frame?
going with this.
Yeah, I don't really know how to ask it.
Yeah, and it's hard. Really and truly, there's no specific data that's going to tell you like you're running at a 9-minute pace and walking at a 13-minute pace, right? So that's where the hard part is. It really is also body mechanics. Like I'm almost 5'8", so my legs are way longer than a lot of other people's legs, right? So that's going to be another factor. So there's no way to specifically say like I'm running at a 9-minute pace and walking at 13 and it averages out to this, right? It really is kind of like a feel. It's one of those things too where you just kind of get to know that feeling, and you can almost like literally just feel it in your body and look at your watch and go, yep, I'm doing it. Because it's really easy to get into that like practice too. So, I can go out and practice on a long run, whatever my pace is going to be for pacing. And then I've got that feeling. I know, and I can feel it. I know when I should be running and walking. And I know like, I don't want to outrun my people, right? So I want to make sure I'm not sprinting. So I obviously know what that feels like too. And so that's, a good gauge too. Hey, am I feeling like I'm doing the right run walk interval? Do I feel like I'm keeping pace? And then I'm watching my watch too, right? Okay, yes, I'm keeping the right pace, so I'm doing good. So yeah, we don't try to run anybody out. So really and truly, there might be a more exact science to it. Nobody really knows. We always tell people, we don't know.
Right. Just do what feels comfortable. Like,
Yeah.
if you're doing a 15:30, make sure that you are going at a pace where you can do that for 15 seconds, and then
Right.
know that you do have 30 seconds to walk and recover.
Right.
And you want to keep the evenness of the balance of your run walk intervals.
A lot of times too, I like to tell runners, you can do anything for 15 seconds. You can do anything for 30 seconds. So don't think about it. Let me tell you when to run and when to walk, and just listen to my conversation, just listen to my voice, make friends with the person next to you. And then before you know it, you're like 10 miles in and you're like, all right, Epcot's right there. So we're almost there, So that's definitely a fun part too, to be able to tell people, I know you thought at the beginning you weren't going to make it, but look where we are.
Right. We're almost there.
We're
we
almost
have just
there.
a 5K left if you're doing
Right.
the half marathon.
Yep.
Yeah. And do you listen to one of those timers? Like, do you have, I know I have a client
Yes.
who uses like Gym Boss. Is that
Yep.
how you keep it?
Yep. So I have a Gym Boss, and I've worn that, I don't know, for years. I'm on my second one now because I killed the first one. It survived many years in the ice and snow, but eventually at some point it just like took a dive and that was it. And there was no repairing it. So I'm on my second one. I run with it all the time, and I do have it set to beep and vibrate. So, I've always got it like right here, or I've got it right on my handheld so I can hear it and see it really well. That way, yeah, I'm on time. I usually always carry a second pace chart, so I always have a backup. I'm one of those people that likes to have a redundancy. I like to have 3 alarms for when we're running dopey, just to make sure I don't sleep through one. And then, I have a second pace chart. So I've always got a pace chart on my my flag that's provided to us, but then I always keep a second one in my handheld. So that way, if I spread out a little bit from my pacing partner where maybe it's like really narrow, we'll kind of try to like one up here and one back here with runners in the middle so that everyone can hear us. That's a great way for me to say like, oh, yep, we're still on pace, because I can see the elapsed time. I can see the elapsed time on my watch, and then I've got my pace chart.
Yeah. So for somebody who doesn't know what a pace chart is, can you just say a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So a pace chart is going to tell you per mile what your total elapsed time should be, and that will equal out to a minute per mile pace, right? So let's say I'm running a 2:30 half and I'm pacing that. I'm going to plug that into a pace chart, 13.1 miles, and then it's going to spit out for me and say, I'm running a 10:26 pace, right? Or an 11:26 pace, I think is what it is for 2:30. So I'm running that pace, and then I know when I get to the 1 mile marker, I should look at my watch and my total elapsed time on my watch and the clock, right, should equal the same number. And then that's how I know that I'm on pace target, right?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
I know some of my listeners have not heard that term before.
Yeah.
So thank you. That's great. So I think I always ask a lot of questions. I think I've asked all of the questions that I had been thinking about for pacing. Was there anything else that you think the listeners should know about runDisney pacing using pacers?
Yeah, let's think about some good stuff. We're all volunteers. So we do this out of the kindness of our heart. And obviously we've been asked to volunteer to do this. So we're, not being paid. We don't work for Disney. We are just normal runners like you. We love to answer questions. If we don't know the answer, we'll definitely try to get you in the direction that we can find one for you. I know somebody asked me recently about where somebody was going to be in a pace group and did they have it before? I was like, I really don't know. You're going to have to ask Chris Twigs. So, like things like that. We're just normal people. We love to run. We love to share our run walk with you. And, we love runDisney just as much as you do. So if you ever need anything, just reach out to us. I know I've had people ask me sometimes like other random questions and I'm like, sure, and any of the Galloway method program that I can share with you, never hesitate to ask. If you ever feel like you want to become part of that team, definitely reach out to Chris Twigs. He's amazing. He's a great coach and, he's the resource to start at. Join the customized Galloway training program too. That's also a great way. Maybe you have a local chapter. A lot of those people will also be runDisney people. So a great way to meet new people and even, join an area. Hey, you might meet new people. You might find that there's a variety of paces and one works for you. Maybe you're struggling to get through a long run and you just need somebody else to run with. That's also a great way to, get through that long run. So pretty cool.
I think we covered a lot.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier about your full-time job.
Yeah. Yep.
Can you tell me more about what
Yeah,
what you
absolutely.
do for work, since this is volunteer work?
Yeah. So I actually have 2 jobs. I work for Boulder Athletic Wear. So I've worked there for probably about, I think we'll be going on 3 years in February. They're running skirts that have shorts that are patented to not ride up. So we've been on the runDisney scene and the running scene for, over a decade. And we're right here in Lakeland, Florida. We're a woman and veteran-owned company. So it's a very cool place to work and be a part of. So that, just furthers my running addiction and my clothing addiction because, they're like potato chips. You can never have just one. And I love it because really and truly I can make a costume out of it, or I can just, have something cute to wear. And I have lots of pockets. So that always helps when you're running a marathon and you need to stuff
all of the gels,
all the stuff. And then I also am a travel agent. So I specialize in Disney and cruising and, Universal. So you name it, I do that too. So I operate that on a secondary basis. And I really love sharing my passion of, travel, running, everything with people. So it's a lot of fun. It's definitely fulfilling.
That's cool. Yeah. So you like you said, you get your clothing fill, you get your travel fill, you get your running fill. You got it all.
Yeah. So I really like it. It's a lot of fun.
That's very cool. Yeah, I started following you on Instagram. That's how we got connected. And I noticed the skirts, especially with your handle on Instagram. And then I noticed the travel stuff. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then one day I was like, oh, she paces. Oh, this is cool. I think you put it up in your stories and you're like, yeah. Do you want to it must have been for Wine and Dine where I most recently saw it, and you were like, this is the time I'm pacing, which is really cool.
And I always like to tell people, hey, even if you don't run my pace or what I'm pacing for that day, come say hi, hang out for a few minutes and go on, recently one of our friends from Germany was in town and they hadn't been back to America for a couple of years, and he had no proof of time, so he ended up running with us, and it was great to be able to share some miles with him. And then at some point, he went on and did his own thing for a little bit, and then he came back and joined us at the finish line, and now have finish line photos with him. So that's really cool too.
Oh, that's so fun. It's
Yeah,
nice to be able to have that finish line photo and be like, look what we did.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. And like that's the best part I think about Run Disney is you meet people and a lot of like-minded people, and it's a lot of fun. I always like to say too, don't go into Run Disney with a time goal. Go into it with a friend goal. Have a good time, have fun, definitely train as best you can. As we all know, things happen, but it's just a fun time. Have a good time. Enjoy yourself because, life is too short and you just never know what's going to happen. And you'd much rather have the memories of running with a friend of yours than, oh, I went out and I ran, my fastest PR. Okay.
Like, but did you see what you were running by? Did you
Yeah.
talk to anybody? Did you have fun, or did you black it out?
Yeah.
That's another interesting thing with going with a pacing group. You can't really stop for character photos.
No, so we don't stop for character photos since we're trying to keep that flag moving at an even pace the whole time, right? But if the lines aren't too terribly long, like for instance, if you're in the 3:30 section and their lines aren't too terrible, you could full on stop. And if you can catch back up to us and just keep running with us the whole time, come on. There's nothing wrong with that. You're always going to be able to see us with the flag. And, if you run faster than that pace on a typical basis, it's no problem. Stop at the thing and catch right back up to us and keep on going. It's a lot of fun that way too. It can be done.
That's great. Yeah, because sometimes the lines, obviously there's ebbs and flows, but sometimes those lines can be super short, and the photographers they go so quick.
Yep.
It's like 5 seconds per person, I swear.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably not exactly that, but you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, great. I got 10 people ahead of me. I could do this a minute. I could catch up.
Yep, absolutely. We've definitely had some folks with us in the 3:30 pace group, and they've gotten every single character photo and hopped right back in with us and kept on going. So it's pretty cool.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So Sherry, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
If somebody wants to connect with you, maybe follow you on Instagram or whatever social platform you prefer, where can they find you?
So definitely you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Runs in a Skirt. I think you can probably guess where that came from. So definitely follow me on there. And then if you ever want to friend me on Facebook, it's just Sherry Marcotte. And I'm happy to help you, direct you, give you any of my tips and tricks, anything you need to know, just let me know.
That's perfect. And we know that you won't be pacing at Walt Disney World over marathon weekend, and probably not Princess or Springtime Surprise, you said, because of Boston and Tokyo, but will you be back maybe in the fall or next winter?
Definitely hoping so. I think I will be out there running with everyone for Dopey, so I will definitely be out there with Dopey with everyone else. I'm just going to be running with a friend of mine who needs a guide for the race instead, so I committed to helping her this go round. So.
Oh, that's perfect. So you'll still be there. You just
I'll still be there.
It.
Yep.
That's great.
Hey, can I ask a quick favor? If you're enjoying this podcast, would you take 20 seconds to leave a rating and review? Leaving a rating and a review helps other runners find this podcast because the platform you're listening to this on will start suggesting it to runners like you. All it takes is 20 seconds. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. As always, thanks so much for listening. That's all for now. Talk to you soon.